It's Tony Robbins. Welcome to another session in Money Masters, or as I said, the $1 million masters of marketing. Because if you're gonna make money in any business, you got to master marketing. What other area of your life or your business can you invest such a small amount of money in and get such a multiplied return? You sure can't do it in the stock market, but in your own business you can. So I don't know if you're a person that's watching and you've subscribed here to learn from these money masters because you already own a business and you want to take things to a whole nother level. If that's true, you're going to learn some incredible tools today. Or maybe you're somebody that you're dealing with some of the new future you want to create. It's a brand new economy out there. Maybe you've been outsourced, displaced, or you're doing great, but you want some other options. You want to create a lifestyle with some different freedom. If you like lifestyle, you're going to like Frank Kern. He's going to be our focus for today. He's a gentleman that personally has helped me a lot. I got 12 different companies, and marketing has been a piece that, frankly, I never really focused on as my primary goal. I built a really strong set of brands, but I had a mission. My mission's like, I want to reach as many people as possible. So I learned a little bit about marketing and took advantage of a wave of marketing in a variety of ways, including infomercials. But boy, the technology today allows you to do things that could never be done before, cheaper, faster, easier, and the ultimate outcome is being able to add more value to your clients or your customers than you ever could have before, and to do it really effectively. And the man I'm going to share with you, by the way, what are his qualifications? Well, how do I try this on for size? Here's a guy that's made and built businesses and sold them in the marketing area, but he's probably got one of the largest records, if not the record, that I know of at least in the industry, and that is on the web. Through his marketing strategies, one company applied his tools and made $18 million in 24 hours. That's correct. Not 1.8, not 180,000, 18 million. So I think we should just get to it and meet the historic Frank Kern.
That was awesome. Wow, man.
Good to be with you, Frank.
Yeah, it's great to be here.
Well, you know how
lot.
much I appreciate you personally. You're just fun to be with. You're a blast to be with, and you're brilliant. I want people to get a sense of things. So why don't we start out? And this was an industry that if you were a damn good marketer 10 years ago, maybe you make $100,000. Now you and an elite group of maybe half dozen or dozen guys and ladies out there, some of them are doing 8 figures, some of them are doing 8 figures in your case in an hour.
Right.
So tell us the story. I like to start out by people seeing where things are. First of all, you get to be cool and relaxed. You got your own unique style. People love your humor, but where did this all start? I know it started for you back, I think, in '99 or so. Where were you back then, and how did it get started? And also I want to hear, I know you went to one of my programs at one point early on, too.
I did, yeah.
So how did it start?
Okay, well, I first got introduced to your stuff. So many of my friends have, we all have been, introduced to your stuff, and everyone saw the infomercial. Right. I saw the infomercial, didn't have the money, so I had to hit my stepdad up for the tapes. So I've always been entrepreneurial and had effortlessly ran many businesses into the ground. And I was in the middle of doing that when I borrowed some of your Personal Power 2 tapes from my stepfather and listened to them, and I was in one room of a single wide trailer that was a used car lot, and that was my office, and I was running a dog fencing business.
This sounds like a story made up, but it's the truth,
okay,
isn't it?
And then,
right.
Yeah, that was before I became part of Massive.
That's right, I got it.
So I'm in the back room of the single wide trailer, and the rest of the business is used cars, and I'm like subletting one room of the single wide used car lot to run this dog fencing business, with the little shot collars for the dogs and stuff.
Are you telling me the truth? Is this a real story?
Yeah,
Because you put me on so damn well. This is a true story.
This really happened. So I was running that business into the ground, which again is a lot easier than it would appear. And so I'm listening to your stuff, and I get it. And I tell you, the thing that I got most from listening to your programs, I've listened to all of them, yes. Really. And Personal Power, it was that sense of positive expectancy. It was like, I can really do something. I don't have to just be this idiot in the back room of the single wide trailer thing. I said, I can really go out and do everything I want, because you have all these stories of so many people that just once they applied their minds, they could do anything. So I found that really inspiring. So I ran that business completely into the ground, and
completed the process.
Yeah, I didn't want to be a quitter, so I started another one, and I was a door-to-door credit card machine salesman. So I lived in Macon, Georgia at the time. If any of you guys have been to Macon, Georgia, it's almost always hot, especially in the summer. It's just ridiculous. And back then, I looked like a kid, because I was probably 20-something, I don't know, 26, 27 years old. And
right.
So I thought the only way for businesses to take me seriously is I'm going to put on this black suit. So I go down to Macy's or whatever and get the off-the-rack black wool suit, and I'm going door to door in Macon, Georgia, where I'm probably the only guy in the entire city wearing a black suit, going door to door, beating on businesses' doors, trying to sell them credit card machines. So here comes this dude, this sweaty, miserable guy in a black suit trying to sell you a credit card machine. So strangely, They didn't really want to buy that many credit
some
card
reason.
machines. Yeah, I don't know. They were weird. Some people don't understand. So I was like, this is awful. And I knew that I wanted to sell stuff, And so to me, it was like, well, I can only make so many in-person sales pitches per day, and these sales pitches really aren't going that well because people just don't appreciate, my dress code here.
Yes.
So I discovered, quote unquote, the internet. And the whole turning point happened when I saw an ad for a guy named Corey Rudel, who has since died, unfortunately, had a course that said, you can make money on the internet, and I'm sure everyone's seen this, maybe not that specific ad, but that you can make money doing X, Y, Z ads.
Sure.
And the first thing that happens is you say, this is bullshit. So I got it anyways, $297, and I read it.
Why did you do it anyways, even though you're skeptical?
Well, my alternative was like worse than losing the 207.
Okay, that's great.
You know what I mean? It was like,
Desperation
okay,
will move you.
I can keep wearing the black suit and going door to door, having people, reject me and slam the door in my face, or I could try something else. So
Sure.
I bought this person's course, and I applied to like one page of the 300 pages of stuff that he gave me, and as a result struggled. And then just really through trial and error, sort of figured it out,
Right.
and figured out how to sell things online.
Now, is it true that this thing started with you seeing somebody that was offline selling something on how to teach your parrot how to talk?
That's when it all really came together for me, yeah.
Okay, you got to tell us the story.
Okay, there's a guy who's a famous person in my world, the direct response world, named Jeff Paul. And I bought some of his seminars on tape,
Right.
and this is, I don't even think I think if you bought them on CD, they were extra. It was like that long ago. It's like, okay, I'll get them on tape, So I get them on tape, and I'm listening to this guy's tape, and he's got someone in the audience, and the guy in the audience is saying, yeah, man, I'm doing really well. I'm publishing these print ads about parrots, and I'm selling this $300 manual on how to get your parrot to talk. And I was like, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. So naturally, I said, well, that's exactly what I should be doing. But I'm going to apply it to the internet. So my logic was, the process these people are going through with the magazine system was, someone's reading a magazine that's specific to the parrots, in this case.
Right.
They see the parrot ad, they call the number or whatever, and they buy the stuff, Well, the internet's just like that in many regards. So it's almost like a big giant classified section of the newspaper.
Sure.
In some respects, in other respects not. But for the business aspect of it, it is. So I determined, well, if people are out there and they're reading like magazines about parrots, and then they're going through all this trouble to write the check and mail it in and pay $300, I figured, well, I could just advertise online and sell a downloadable parrot course, and probably make some money without having to really do anything. So I did, and it worked. I couldn't believe it. There's a little tool out there, and I went to it. It was Yahoo.com's tool now. Now Google has a similar tool, but you can type in a word, and
Right.
it'll show you how many people are searching for that word per month. So I typed it in there, and I typed parrot, and there were like 70,000 people a month searching for the word parrot. And I was like, okay, well this is kind of starting to make sense, because if somebody has a parrot, they want the thing to talk, or some of them
Yeah, I guess
will.
so, yeah.
I said, if I just stick my parrot book in front of these 70,000 people, I'm
So
sure
bear
to
in
sell
mind,
a
you didn't
couple
have,
of them.
here's what I love. You didn't have a parrot book,
No.
right?
Yeah.
And are you a writer?
No.
So what did you do? You just hired somebody to write a
I
parrot book?
did, yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, I just, there was a website called Elance, which I don't use now I write all my own stuff now, but
Yes.
if it's something I don't know what I'm talking about, I'll get someone else to do it.
Sure.
And the Elance, I just went up there and I said, listen, I need someone to write a book on how to teach your parrot to talk. And the way I did it was I wrote the ad for the book, and I made all these promises in the ad, and I said, I want you to read this ad and fulfill as many of these promises as possible in the book, and then tell me the ones that are impossible so I can get rid of them.
Right.
And they said, okay, we'll do it. And the person was a contributing editor to one of the Bird magazines. It was like a real person. And
Wow.
I put it together and started selling it, and it did good. I think the best month was like $3,500.
Right.
But I knew, I said, that approach was a lot less intimidating to me than the concept of building a giant business. It was like, okay, that was kind of easy.
Right.
Finding this little market and having a product made, knowing what they wanted, having a little product made, said, here you go, you can.
And you kind of got in front of a trend that was already, a train that was already going down the track instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, so to speak.
Yeah,
right?
I have no interest in trying to do
Yeah.
anything that's remotely difficult.
But here's what I
know,
thought was amazing, and I'm curious in terms of a background, if I can get into your psyche for a second at a real simple level. So many people have an opportunity sitting in front of them. You've made that offer to people. There's opportunities all over the world for people, and they don't act on it. I understand, here you have this opportunity. You could have said, well, I don't have a book. This parrot thing is stupid, whatever the case would be. You not only did that, but you also then realized, even if I'm only making $3,500, what if I had 40 of these sites.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
You know, or am I right in the direction?
Yeah.
I'm curious, what did that turn into? Because then you start thinking $80,000 a month or 60 or 50 or, instead of 3,500 when you do those
Right.
types of things. And what influenced you? What made you, be willing to scale your thinking like that? I know you have a grandfather that has a big impact on your life in terms of business person. I'm just somebody at home. I want them to get strategies today, but I also want them to kind of question anything that would stop them. And what's the difference in your thinking that made you follow through and scale things?
Well, first of all, I just have this underlying belief that you can do anything. Like anything is possible.
Right.
I mean, if that hasn't been proven repeatedly throughout history, then you're not paying attention.
Right.
I mean, we got people go to the moon, for God's sake. I mean,
Right.
so surely I can make a couple more ebooks. You know what I mean? And it's the ease of use. So it's, to be fair, I don't know if I would have gone through all of that if I would have had to write the book myself and research it myself and, spend the money and place ads in magazines, and if it took a lot of time.
Right.
But due to the nature of the internet, you can literally have a project like that, the beginnings of a project like that, like tomorrow.
Yeah.
You can test traffic, you can have ads up, and you can do it really inexpensively.
Right.
As in like for $20 or something, you can like start seeing something, so if people are interested or whatever. So the barrier of entry was very low. And the second aspect of that is I wanted to have a lot of money. Having a lot of money is great, and I think I know that I deserve to have a lot of money and that it's easily attainable, so why wouldn't I?
Right.
You know what I mean? Why wouldn't anyone do that? We live in my opinion, I know there's all this talk about the economy and stuff, which is it's true to a degree, but on the flip side of that, I think we live in the most prosperous time in the history of our civilization. I mean, it's not, obviously it's going to get any better, or it's going to get better than this, but it never has been this good.
Yes.
I mean, it's effortless. You and I can like send a promotion to people in China right now for $0. And it's like, how could we not take advantage of this? And all barriers have been completely removed, and if you don't have the technological ability, you can hire it out. It cost me $650 to have that book written. That's it. And so I didn't have to talk to anybody. I didn't have to, risk like looking dumb or whatever and being like, oh, can you write this book for me? And they go, we won't, I just posted a little job on this website and people clamored to get the job for me.
Wow.
And that is even more, present today than it ever has been.
So the biggest difference between marketing in the 20th century, as corny as it sounds, and the 21st century is what? What would you say has changed?
Well, that's a big question. So I'll start on the easiest level. What's really changed is ease and speed.
Right.
You can, not that this is really the right thing to do, and we'll get to that in a minute, but you can emulate the presence of a giant corporation like tomorrow without any real difficulty.
Or risks, or very limited risks anyway.
Very limited risks. You can be global, like right now. I mean, you put up a website and it's there. 80 gazillion people, that's a real number, I looked that up.
Did you?
Yeah, they use Google every day and all the search engines. You can buy an ad under your type of business right now. So if a guy searches, custom painted tennis shoes and you're in that business and you want to be the global leader, you can give Google some money and tomorrow they're going to see your company right there, every single, and that's never happened up until now.
Yeah.
And another aspect of it is the speed at which you get results. So we can send a marketing message out there to a customer base or stick an ad in front of a group of people, and we can get response instantly, like within an hour. To say this, we need to change this, or this is hot, we need to keep going on that. We've never had that ability ever.
Right. And now that's also very disruptive to the powers that be, so to speak, because somebody brand new can come in and take market share, shift things very rapidly. They don't have all the infrastructure, they don't have the weight. You look at so many businesses today that are trying to figure out how to retool because they were built in a different time, and the time has changed so radically now. What's the price of a business that doesn't learn some of these guerrilla approaches today in your mind?
Oh, an existing, they're doomed. And here's why. They have succeeded in spite of basic human nature. Okay, so I believe that as people, we like to do business with people that we know, like, and trust. As a matter of fact, I believe there are 3 reasons people don't buy. They either don't want it, they don't have the money, or they don't believe you, which is going to be trust, right? So, assuming they want it and have the money, and incidentally, I believe that the not having the money thing is just they don't want it badly enough. But assuming those are gone, if you don't have the trust there, you don't have the business.
Right.
And now more than ever, and I think it's always been somewhat a degree true, but now more than ever, the big entity, the faceless, nameless corporation
Is now trusted the least.
is not even remote, is feared.
Yeah.
So to continue on down that path is just beating your head against a brick wall. It's crazy. And the future and the now is people doing business with people. You know,
so companies are moving from the faceless entity to
Absolutely.
really developing an intimate relationship with their clients, not having customers, really making them clients, really making them friends.
Exactly. Friends is key, you know, and it requires a shift in the thinking of business, I think, to view their customers as their friends and to genuinely care.
Right.
You know, the image I get of old school business is a bunch of guys in suits drinking scotch in a boardroom, laughing and smoking.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that's gone. I mean,
Right.
you're not going to survive.
Yeah. What's the new image?
A bunch of guys having fun, and you know, or a bunch of people having fun, you know, a small little tightly knit guerrilla group, and their customers enjoying them. You know, an open door, transparent sort of business.
And the world's becoming so transparent today. I mean, you see that in every aspect of our lives.
Yeah.
Maybe the exception of politics, but even that's getting penetrated.
we're on to you guys.
Yeah.
I think,
Starting to get penetrated though with blogs and everybody being able to participate in the conversation. So marketing today, if you're going to define marketing today, what is marketing?
Well, that's another one of those really, really big questions. So I think my gut reaction is stuff you do to get money, you know. So yeah, I'm going to stick with that answer actually because I like it. That's my own internal definition.
And with you were saying your philosophy of marketing, be cool to people, and I mean, it's I literally.
Well, yeah. So here's my methodology behind
me.
marketing: is I like to give the best that I can, and help people out. And by doing so, and be very, genuine with them, and by doing so, I create a situation where they ask me to sell them stuff. And see, a traditional person would say, well, that's ridiculous. You need to go out there, you need to get them. Of course, you should be aggressive in your prospecting and stuff. But I think if you provide enough value, then people will say, man, how can I get more of this?
Right.
And I have a theory on it, and really a system for doing it that I'll share with you if you like. I call it the results in advance system. And I learned this working with someone in the seduction market, which in and of itself is very funny because that's really, my wife is here now. She's like, it's not. That is not his strong point. But I have a friend who's an author, and he wrote a best-selling book about seduction and dating. More accurately, we'll say dating, so it doesn't sound weird because it really is dating. So I said, you should release this product that really helps people out, helps men out, and helps them, attract the woman of their dreams and everything. And the challenge was there's so many people in that space. I know it's an obscure market, but that's great because it shows this stuff can work for anybody, right?
Right.
There's so many people in that space, and there's not a lot of trust there.
Right.
So the strategy was if we could take the market and we could give them little results in advance incrementally, what would happen is that each time we delivered a little bit of results in advance, their trust in us, and by us I mean him really, because I was the silent guy behind the curtain, their trust would grow and their desire for the product would grow, and it would grow exponentially with every little bit you incrementally provide a result. So here's the way I like to imagine it, is those of us at home. You take a pen and a piece of paper. On this side, you draw a little guy, and then you have like a timeline. You divide the timeline in 4 or 5 little units, and then you draw the end result here. So in the case of the dating person, I drew a guy, and then there's like a couple at the end.
Right.
And then in your little lines that you're drawing, you have like each step that it would take to get to that end result.
Right.
So in this example, the first step was just to approach a woman, right?
Yes.
So I said, what we should do is we should give these people for free without being, weird or anything, to say, hey, listen, we understand that it's scary to go out and approach a complete stranger. The rejection stuff is there. Here's some ways that you can overcome that. And here's some ways that you can approach someone without looking like a wacko or an idiot. And we said, do with this what you will. So what happens is the person who gets that information says, that's awesome. They go do it, and they get results.
Right.
So now their next question is going to be, what do I do now?
Right.
So
I've approached her now.
Yeah,
the door's open.
So now you're not going to them saying, now you need to listen to me more.
Right.
They're coming to you saying, thank you. First of all, I owe you one. That's great. Now what do I do? So we've just moved that person from this side of the timeline one step closer.
Got it.
So the trust is here, the desire is here. Right. Next step is, we understand that a lot of folks had great luck with this approach thing. Good job. It's not as scary as it seemed. They wanted to talk to you too, didn't they? Isn't that great?
Yeah.
So here are some conversation starters that you can have without looking dumb, and so you can be cool. Give them that. They have the conversation. Their next thing is, how do I get the phone number? Next thing is, how do I ask her out on a date?
Right.
Next thing is, what do we talk about? And all that. So you deliver those little chunks, and by the time you're ready to sell them something, there is no selling them something. They're saying, would you please just give me all the stuff now? I'm sold.
Don't drag it out on me anymore either. I need the whole solution. Wow, that's
So,
fantastic.
so now you're no longer a salesman.
Right.
You know, you're one friend helping another friend, or in this case, thanks to the internet, a very large group
Right.
of people. And you not only gain a lot of customers, but you gain like these raving fan type customers, you know,
Right.
who really like you,
Right.
who like want you. They're like, oh, well, what are you going to sell us now? You know,
You're a
and
mentor.
that's-
You can be a mentor to millions, whereas it's
Yeah.
very hard to mentor more than one-on-one in most cases, unless you have just
Exactly.
tremendous skills from the front of the room. And even then, you have to get everybody into a room.
Right.
You know, here you don't. The room is wherever they live, wherever they are, 24/7, any
Yeah.
place in the world. So, come back one step for me. When you made your success in the parrot business, teaching parrot to talk, blows my mind. You looked at that and you said, okay, maybe that business at $3,500 is a nice business, but if I want to do better, I understood that one of the things you did is you started saying, how do I get, you know, how many different kinds of pets are there? And you
Right.
began to expand. Tell me a little bit about what went next, because I know you built that into a business you sold.
Yeah, that was a good one. So I started doing it with dogs, you know, and dating back to when I had the
Getting
dog
dogs to
fencing
talk?
business.
That's
Yeah,
amazing.
getting dogs
Amazing.
to talk.
Right.
And, you know, it's only weird when you start talking back, you know. So yeah, I was, you know, having been in the pet industry, and by being in the pet industry, I mean just unsuccessfully trying to sell pet containment systems.
Yes.
I'd worked with hundreds of dogs, literally, and I learned that dogs respond really well to positive reinforcement. So the way I was trained to train the dogs was, you say, listen, man, you don't go near this wire because you're going to get shocked. And then they get shocked and they freak out. And what I learned is that if you just like, instead of taking that approach, if you say, hey, isn't it awesome in here away from that wire? Let's just hang out in here. They respond really well to that and they're not afraid. You know, and I know that's kind of a weird way to put it, but that was the experience. So I read some stuff on dog training and I created a course about dog training, and it's all about the positive reinforcement aspects of dogs
Right.
and why dogs do certain things, you
Yes.
know. Really basic stuff, but stuff that people just don't think about, you know,
Yeah.
unless they've like been in the pet containment business.
Did you ever read the book, Don't Shoot the Dog?
No.
Oh, you'd love that book. It's all about positive reinforcement. Please continue.
Okay, so I said, you know, there's really, and I knew this from the perspective of having worked with so many dogs, I said, there's not really any physiological difference and not a significant psychological difference between a Great Dane and a poodle when it comes to basic obedience training.
Right.
When it comes to, you know, the dog is jumping on you because he wants your attention. That's so when you say down boy and you push him, you're just giving him attention and he's going
Right.
to jump on you more.
Right.
Both dogs are going to react the same. So I said, you know, this course is really a one-size-fits-all course. So I developed a system to where I could automatically create a different website for every breed of dog, of which there's 600 something breeds of dogs,
Wow.
and then get it all over the entire internet like that at one time. You know, so I just pressed a button, it was made. I placed the ads for every single breed of dog, and the next thing I know is, you know, it was $1 million a year business.
Wow.
And that went from, I think I started that business in 2004, and it did its first million in 2005.
Wow.
I think it's 2000. Not that anyone really cares. 2005 or 2006. I get the years confused.
Right. Just don't do that when you get married. It's a little
Okay. Yeah.
But tell me seriously, you sold that business though.
I did.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
so you kept it for a couple of years, and then sold, and were you able to sell it for a multiple of, without telling me the numbers, were you able to sell it for a multiple? or
It
something?
was a very
cash
favorable, exchange for both parties.
That's
So,
good.
yeah.
That's good.
You know.
Well, the beauty is, the reason I bring it up is I think a lot of people, when they think about doing business on the internet, they don't think of a sustainable business. They think it's something very often they're just starting over. But you know, you're really looking at how to create income for life in many cases. It's a
Absolutely.
different mindset. So maybe address that for us if you would.
Well, the reason I started online was first of all, there was that pain of going door to door and selling, and what happened was, it's interesting how things come full circle. You know, what happened is I developed this belief that dealing with people is horrible. And I was like, I don't want to deal with anybody. People suck, because I'm getting, you know, people are telling me to, you know, get out of here all day.
Yeah,
So
right.
I create this system, you know, through what I told you about, these little downloadable information products, nothing fancy, and I create this automatic income stream where I literally have nothing to do. So I'm just sitting around, and money's, and it's great. Now people watching will be like, okay, shut up, we hate you. But really, you know, it's like I would go to work and I would just sit in my office. I'd be like, why should we be doing something?
Right.
You know, so I would, so, you know, sometimes I would interact with other people who were in the internet marketing space, and I'd start giving them tips, and I'd like really enjoy it, and I would look forward to the phone calls, and I figured, you know, I should be teaching this stuff because I really like it, and I do it anyway for free. So
Right.
that's why I got rid of the dog business and then started teaching it full time.
Right.
So it can provide you with, definitely can provide you with income for life for doing literally nothing, but it gets boring, is what I'm telling you. it's real, first of all, and it will get boring. So you might as well do what you love first.
It's true.
Yeah.
If you don't do what you love,
Yeah.
you're going to be miserable no matter what. I've met so many people over the years, and I was at one stage in my life, I had the privilege as well, where you don't have to work. And what happens is people are happy usually 30, 60, 90 days, 4 months at the outside.
And you start
and
getting a little
they're always
flaky.
calling the other friends and going, hey, want to go do this? And like, no, I got to do this, I got to do that. And we have to be employed. The problem is you want to make enough money, you don't have to work.
Right.
Right? That's
There you
different
go.
to not have to work
Yeah.
than to not work. If you don't work, there's no sense of fulfillment, and maybe not work in financial sense. Some people do it in a nonprofit sense, but it's something you're passionate about. So what was it like when you were able to tell your wife, you don't have to work anymore?
That was a big one. And it was my grandfather. So when we started dating, he goes, what does she do for a living? And she was a graphic artist. And I said, well, she's a graphic artist. And he goes, I would be embarrassed if my girl had to work. And I was like, gosh, everything my
And
grandfather said was gospel.
Been your role model, hasn't he?
Absolutely. So I was like, well, okay, she shouldn't. Now, not that she should not work.
Sure.
That she shouldn't have
to work, right?
Yeah, exactly. So that was a major moving toward thing for me. It's like, I really want to make it so my wife doesn't have to work. And we both were very happy with her not having to work.
At least.
Yeah.
Was it something that you believed would ever happen before that?
Yeah, I've always, and largely in part, thanks to the stuff that I learned from you earlier on, I believe you can do anything you want to.
Right.
Which is why I'm so adamantly looking at the people who are watching this saying, listen, I promise you can do this, because I understand it's probably a little bit strange for people who don't know me saying, okay, there's this long-haired, very laid-back dude talking about making millions of dollars, not doing anything, and having it become like kind of a hassle.
Yeah.
So you really, when I tell you can do whatever you want to do, like you really can, as surprised as you may be, like I was, it happens, so you might as well go for it.
Well, one of the, it's part of your style and part of what's true. I mean, you get to see you get to surf, you love your little daughters, you get to be with your lady, you've got this quality of life. And so many people get into business, you ask them, why'd you get into business? And they say, for freedom, so I have more free time. And it's, for most people, when they start a business, I don't care what the business in the beginning, saying you're starting a business to have more free time is like saying, I'm going to have a baby so I can have more free time.
Sure, okay.
But in this business, what's different is how many employees, without revealing the tens of millions you do, maybe we'll talk about the